A husband beat his wife, but a lawyer ruined his life. Let's call him Joe. I need to call him something, the man I ruined, but I can't call him by his real name, so let's call him Joe. Joe was a wife beater. I was hired by Joe's brother-in-law, the brother of the wife Joe beat. My client was also Joe's former business partner. In addition to the whole, you beat up my sister thing, my client had another fight with Joe, a serious business dispute. My client went to court and referred the matter to me for review. In the dimly lit chambers of the courtroom, the air crackled with the unspoken animosity between the two figures seated opposite each other. On one side, Joseph, exuding an air of forced bravado that couldn't quite mask the tremor in his hands. He built his life on a foundation of intimidation and deceit, and this lawsuit was a tremor that threatened to bring the whole edifice crashing down. Across from him, I, a resolute bastion of justice, sat armed with not just legal expertise, but the unwavering conviction of the wronged. My client, not just any aggrieved party, was Joseph's brother-in-law, the man whose sister had borne the brunt of Joseph's cruelty years ago. This was more than a legal battle. It was a reckoning, a long overdue balancing of the scales. Joseph, accustomed to bending the world to his will through sheer force of personality, saw the lawsuit as a mere nuisance, a minor inconvenience to be swatted aside with his usual repertoire of charm and lies. He probably envisioned the courtroom as another stage, where his theatrics and fabricated narratives would sway the jury, just like they'd swayed judges and colleagues in the past. But this time, the audience was different. They weren't blinded by his charisma. They saw the predator lurking beneath the veneer of charm. The trial was an epic chess match, each move meticulously calculated, each word a carefully placed pawn on the board. Joseph's lawyers, masters of obfuscation and misdirection, weaved a tangled web of deceit, hoping to drown the truth in a sea of doubt. They reinterpreted facts, questioned motives, and twisted narratives like pretzels, desperate to bury the ugly truth beneath a mountain of half-truths. But I was no novice. I had spent months meticulously dissecting Joseph's life, unearthing the skeletons in his closet, and mapping the labyrinthine alleys of his financial chicanery. One by one, I exposed his lies. Witness testimonies, each a searing indictment, chipped away at his carefully constructed persona. Forensic evidence, unearthed from the depths of his bank accounts, shone a harsh light on his web of financial misdeeds. And finally, his own words, once weapons of intimidation, became the shackles that bound him, each lie a barb in the barbed wire fence he constructed around himself. The verdict, when it came, was a thunderclap, a resounding affirmation of truth and justice. Joseph, once a titan in his own manufactured world, was reduced to a shell of his former self. His empire, built on sand, crumbled around him, leaving him stranded in the wreckage. The house, once a symbol of his dominance, became his gilded cage, a constant reminder of his fall from grace. He retreated to the damp, unfinished basement, a king dethroned, surviving on the scraps of his tenant's rent, each check a bitter reminder of his dependence. He knew, with a chilling certainty, that I was one step ahead. Any attempt to hide assets, any flicker of financial manipulation, would be met with the swift, unyielding hand of justice. He was a cornered animal, gasping for air in the tightening grip of my legal pursuit. This was not just a legal victory, it was a moral imperative. For my client, it was the sweet balm of vindication, the restoration of his stolen dignity. For me, it was a testament to the unwavering power of truth, a beacon of hope in a world often shrouded in darkness. The echoes of that courtroom victory still resonate, a reminder that even the most cunning manipulator can be brought to heel, and that sometimes justice, though delayed, eventually finds its mark. The air hung heavy with a heady mix of gunpowder and ozone, the bittersweet scent of a battle hard fought and finally won. Joe, the once untouchable titan of deceit, lay sprawled in the wreckage of his own making, his empire of ill-gotten gains reduced to a smoldering ruin. His final redoubt, the dingy, unfinished basement he called home, had been breached, the ironclad gates of his corporate shell pierced, his fraudulent schemes exposed to the harsh glare of truth. His lawyer, a man perpetually harried by the fallout of Joe's storms, approached me with a plea in his eyes. "Can't he keep the basement?" he rasped. his voice hoarse from years of shouting into the void. It's free, after all. He has nowhere else to go. A flicker of sympathy, a rogue ember in the inferno of my righteous fury, threatened to ignite. I knew the allure of such sentiment, the siren song of forgiveness that could easily lead one astray from the righteous path. But this wasn't about personal vendettas. It was about dismantling the very scaffolding of lies Joe had used to oppress for so long. Ask the buyer, I said, my voice a steely echo in the cavernous hall of justice. The buyer, a mere pawn in the grand chess game I had orchestrated, was one of my client's most trusted lieutenants, a silent proxy for the true victor in this long, grueling war. The lawyer's face crumpled, his mask of professional composure cracking like ice under the pressure of my unwavering resolve. Joe, the man who once owned this and that here, there, and all over town, was now reduced to begging for scraps from the very table he had once plundered with such impunity. But even in the crucible of victory, a disquieting unease gnawed at the edges of my satisfaction. The image of Joe, stripped bare and cast adrift, tugged at the frayed edges of my conscience. Perhaps it was the flicker of vulnerability in his eyes, a glimpse of the human being buried beneath the layers of arrogance and avarice. Or maybe it was the echo of his truck, that monstrous, gas-guzzling behemoth that had become his last refuge, a testament to the hollowness at the heart of his empire. Against my better judgment, I let him keep it, that monstrous metal womb where he could find a semblance of shelter. It was a concession, a tiny island in the vast ocean of his misfortune, a whisper of mercy in the thundering chorus of his comeuppance. But even that meager comfort wouldn't last forever. The tenants, the very people Joe had squeezed dry and cast aside like spent lemons, had grown restless. Their voices, once choked by fear, now rose in a crescendo of righteous indignation, demanding not just justice, but a chance to reclaim their lives. Their call wouldn't be ignored. The day Joe lost his truck was the day the music finally stopped. The tenants, emboldened by their newfound voice, had filed suit, their collective cry for justice a battering ram against the crumbling walls of Joe's remaining pretense. The truck, that symbol of his last shred of freedom, was seized, leaving him truly and utterly adrift, a dethroned king in a kingdom built on sand. The victory, however, was a bittersweet chalice. It tasted of vindication, yes, but also of a hollow ache. The fall of Joe, the man who once owned everything, left a void in its wake, a stark reminder of the fragility of power and the corrosive nature of unchecked ambition. But amidst the ruins, a fragile hope bloomed. The tenants, empowered by their victory, could begin to rebuild their lives, brick by brick, on the foundation of their hard-won justice. My client, finally free from the shadow of Joe's tyranny, could step into the sunlight and start anew. And even Joe, stripped bare and exposed, had a chance to confront the stark reality of his choices. Perhaps in the harsh glare of accountability, he might finally see the true cost of his actions, the pain he had inflicted, the lives he had shattered. The path to redemption would be long and arduous, paved with remorse and the Sisyphean task of rebuilding trust. But it was a path he could choose to walk, a chance to emerge from the wreckage, not as the monster he had become, but as a human being, finally accountable for his deeds. The rusty truck, a hulking behemoth of rust and chrome, sat like a reproachful sentinel in the distant lot. Every scratch and dent, every faded decal, told a story of Joe's decline, a testament to the corrosive power of unchecked anger and resentment. From my 15th floor perch, I could almost hear the engine's cough, the rasping gurgle that had once echoed through the narrow driveway, a mechanical growl of defiance. But the driveway itself was quiet now, bathed in the golden glow of a city slowly waking to a new day. The tenant, her voice no longer a tremor of fear, spoke of plans for weekend barbecues and long walks in the park, the simple pleasures once stolen by a man's vindictive whim. The call from the pro bono lawyer had been a predictable echo of desperation, a Hail Mary pass from a cornered fighter. His arguments, polished and practiced, bounced off the shield of my conviction, mere pebbles against the granite wall of principle. For this wasn't just about a truck, nor about the legalities that danced around its possession. This was about the intangible threads that bind a community, the unspoken contract of respect and decency that allows us to coexist in the intricate tapestry of urban life. Joe, in his blind rage, had severed those threads, replaced them with barbed wire and broken glass. He had sought to trap a woman in her own home, to cast a shadow of fear over her every step. But in doing so, he had unwittingly ignited a spark, a quiet rebellion against the tyranny of the entitled. The truck then became a symbol, a totem of power stripped bare, its chrome fixate peeling away to reveal the rusted underbelly of a man consumed by bitterness. Its removal wasn't just the act of freeing a driveway, it was the symbolic reclamation of a stolen space, the defiant reclamation of agency and peace. The threat of a lawsuit hung heavy, a storm cloud on the horizon. Paper tigers would be unleashed, legal jargon would be wielded like weapons, and the fate of the truck would be debated in sterile courtrooms far removed from the sun-drenched driveway where the real battle had been fought. But even as the legal eagle circled, I felt a strange sense of calm. The victory, in its essence, had already been won. For Joe, the truck was more than just a vehicle. It was a last vestige of control, a final anchor to a life slowly slipping through his grasp. Its absence wouldn't just be a legal defeat, it would be a stark confrontation with his own emptiness, a forced reckoning with the consequences of his actions. And the tenants, emboldened by their liberation, would begin the slow process of rebuilding. Brick by brick, they would reclaim their shared space, their voices rising in a chorus of defiance against the darkness. The truck, once a symbol of oppression, would become a cautionary tale, a whispered reminder of the dangers of unchecked power and the indomitable spirit of a community united. The city, in all its chaotic glory, would continue to spin, its gears grinding and churning, oblivious to the quiet revolution unfolding in a forgotten driveway. But from my vantage point, high above the concrete jungle, I could see the flicker of hope, the fragile blossom pushing through the cracks, a testament to the enduring power of justice, even in the most unexpected corners of the human experience. And in that quiet triumph, the echoes of the truck's rusted engine would fade, replaced by the gentle hum of a city reclaiming its own heartbeat. The city thrummed beneath me, a pulsing organism of concrete and chrome, its morning symphony a cacophony of honking horns and distant sirens. But in my 15th floor sanctuary, bathed in the golden glow of dawn, a different rhythm echoed, the steady beat of a satisfied heart. The day before, I had orchestrated a victory not of trumpets and fanfare, but of whispers and shadows, a quiet coup that left the taste of bittersweet justice on my tongue. It all started with Joe's truck, a hulking behemoth of rust and chrome, a monument to his ill-gotten gains and bloated sense of entitlement. He parked it defiantly in front of my client's driveway, a final act of spite from a cornered animal. But I, the wolf in lawyer's clothing, wasn't one to be cowed by such displays. With a swift, calculated move, I had the truck towed, planted it right outside the office of his pro bono lawyer, a silent challenge etched in metal and grime. The phone call that followed was a symphony of indignation, the pro bono lawyer a sputtering volcano of outrage. His threats of lawsuits and righteous pronouncements washed over me like tepid waves against a granite shore. I countered with the quiet hum of finality, the unspoken threat of impounding the truck to satisfy the full weight of my client's judgment. In the end, Joe, not the lawyer, was the one who surrendered, his spirit as rusty as his vehicle. From my perch above the city, I watched him shuffle out of the office, a shadow of the swaggering bully who'd once held this town in his thrall. The joy had leached from his eyes, replaced by a hollow emptiness that mirrored the crater I'd carved from his life. He took his leave in that truck, a chariot of defeat spewing black plumes of smoke into the clear morning sky. His departure wasn't just a victory for my client, it was a reclamation of the city itself. Joe's tyranny, an invisible blight that had festered for too long, had been excised, leaving behind a raw wound, yes, but one with the potential to heal and bloom anew. The tenants, once cowering in the shadows of his fear, could now reclaim their lives, their laughter echoing through the halls they once navigated with trepidation. The city, ever the stoic observer, continued its relentless dance, but something had shifted. The air felt lighter, the sun a little brighter, and in the hushed corners of my firm, the tale of Joe's truck became legend, a whispered cautionary note to those tempted by the siren song of unchecked power. It was a testament to the enduring truth that justice, like a patient predator, can stalk the shadows, delivering its verdict not with a roar, but with the quiet rumble of a dying engine and the fading echo of a humbled man. And as I sipped my coffee, the bitter brew now a sweet nectar of victory, I knew that this wouldn't be my last dance in the shadows. The city, with its endless web of secrets and injustices, would always need its wolves in lawyers' clothing, and I, the hunter of shadows, would always be there, waiting for the next hunt, the next opportunity to reclaim a piece of this city and stitch it back together, thread by thread, victory by victory. For the story of Joe's truck was not just an ending, it was a beginning, a whispered promise of a city where shadows could be dispelled and justice, like a fragile flower, could push through the cracks, reclaiming the concrete jungle one quiet triumph at a time. Joe drove away, puffs of smoke billowing from the tailpipe of his huge ancient truck. I was pretty sure I'd never hear from him again, and I never did.